You know that feeling when someone throws a financial term at you casually, like everyone already understands it, and you're nodding along, but somewhere behind the nodding, your brain is quietly screaming, what does that actually mean for my life? That's the 4% rule for most of us. You've heard it probably dozens of times. Some advisor on YouTube mentions it like it's common knowledge. An article drops it into a paragraph like background noise. Based on the 4% rule, you'll need, and then a number that either makes you feel slightly better or significantly worse, depending on the day. But nobody stops and explains it. Not really. Not in a way that connects to your actual paycheck, your actual bills, your actual life at 55. It just floats out there. This number that's supposedly the key to knowing if your retirement will work. And you're left pretending you fully get it while privately wondering if your savings could really sustain you for 25 or 30 years. I spent years in that exact position, hearing the term, feeling like I should understand it, and never once sitting down with the actual math. And when I finally did, when I traced it back to the original research and ran it against real Gen X numbers, what I found surprised me. Not because the news was bad, because the news was better than almost anyone in our generation realizes. Let me show you what I mean. My name is Jack. I'm Gen X, same as you, and I spend a lot of time studying what actually works financially for people like us in our 50s. Not the recycled advice designed for 25-year-olds, but real strategies for where we actually are right now. If that's useful to you, hit subscribe and tap the thumbs up. It helps more than you think. Quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Now let's get into this. Let me explain why this specific topic is so loaded for our generation, because it goes beyond not understanding a formula. We live in the most oversaturated financial advice environment in human history. Every morning there's a new article telling you the 4% rule is dead. By lunch, another one says it's the gold standard. Some advisor says you need 3% to be safe. Another says 5% is fine. A TikTok from someone half our age says rules don't matter. Just invest in whatever's trending this week. And here's the part nobody talks about. For Gen X, this conflicting noise doesn't just create confusion. It creates distrust. We've been lied to by systems before. We've watched sure things collapse. So when every expert contradicts the last one, we don't pick a side. We check out. We stop trusting any of it. And when you stop trusting the information, you stop acting on it, which is the most expensive response of all. And underneath all that noise is a fear that's very specific to our generation. The fear of outliving our money. Not running low, not cutting back, running out. Completely. Being 78 years old with nothing left and no pension, no safety net, and nobody to call. Our parents had employer pensions that paid them every month until they died. We have a portfolio and a prayer. So when someone says, just follow the 4% rule and you'll be fine, part of us wants to believe it. And part of us immediately thinks, what if they're wrong? And that fear is valid, but it's also solvable. Once you actually understand where the 4% rule came from, what it was designed to survive, and what it really means for someone with our specific numbers. Let's break it open. Here's the 4% rule in plain language. No jargon, no assumptions, just the actual concept and the math behind it. In 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen published a piece of research that changed retirement planning forever. He went back through every 30-year period in American market history, every combination of booms, busts, recessions, crashes, and recoveries, and asked one simple question. What is the maximum percentage a retiree could have withdrawn from their portfolio each year without running out of money before 30 years were up? The answer across every single historical period he tested was 4% adjusted each year for inflation. That's it. That's the rule. If you retire with a portfolio and withdraw 4% of the starting balance each year, adjusting that amount for inflation, historically your money would have survived every 30-year stretch the American market has ever produced, including the Great Depression, including every crash since. Think of your portfolio like farmland. The 4% rule says you can harvest the crops every year, 4% of what the land produced, without ever eating into the soil itself. The land keeps growing, the harvest keeps coming. As long as you don't take more than the land can replenish, the farm survives. Now let's put real Gen X numbers on this. Say you reach retirement with $400,000. 4% of $400,000 is $16,000 a year, about $1,330 a month from your portfolio. Now add Social Security. If your benefit is $28,000 a year, roughly $2,300 a month, your combined retirement income is $44,000 a year. That's about $3,600 a month. Is that luxury? No, but for someone whose mortgage is paid off or nearly there, whose kids are independent, whose commuting costs are gone, that's a functional, real, livable retirement income. And it's built on $400,000, not $1 million. The 4% rule doesn't require a 7-figure portfolio to work. It requires understanding how to build income from what you actually have. So if the math is this clear and the research is this well established, why does it still feel impossible for most of us to trust? Because of something that runs deeper than any spreadsheet. Our generation defaults to catastrophe. Like when you've watched 3 major financial crises hit during your working years, like when you've personally felt the floor drop out from under your portfolio, your job, your sense of security, your brain rewires itself. It stops planning for probable outcomes and starts planning exclusively for worst cases. Psychologists call this catastrophic thinking, and it doesn't just affect how you feel about money, it affects every financial decision you make. A 2024 report from the Natixis Global Survey of Individual Investors found that running out of money in retirement is the single greatest financial fear among investors over 50, ranking higher than market crashes, inflation, or healthcare costs, higher than everything. And the researchers found that this fear doesn't decrease with higher portfolio balances. People with 500,000 are nearly as afraid as people with 100,000. The fear isn't proportional to the math, it's proportional to the trauma. And here's what that does to our generation specifically. We don't plan for retirement. We plan for catastrophe. We hear 4% and immediately think, what about a crash in year 1? What about inflation hitting 8%? What about a medical emergency that drains everything? Each scenario stacks on the last until the 4% rule, which has survived every historical disaster thrown at it, feels as fragile as a paper umbrella. And that catastrophizing has a real cost. It either keeps us from retiring when we could, working extra years out of fear, not necessity, or it keeps us from spending what we've saved, living a retirement defined by anxiety instead of freedom. Either way, the fear costs us years. Not financial years, life years. The 4% rule wasn't designed for a perfect world. It was designed for exactly the kind of world we've lived through, and understanding that changes how you see everything. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part that genuinely surprised me when I first saw the data. Most people hear the 4% rule and assume it means if everything goes exactly right, your money will barely last 30 years. Like you're stretching every dollar to the absolute limit and hoping it holds. Here's the part most people completely miss. Bengen's research didn't just show that 4% survived every 30-year period. It showed that in most of those periods, the large majority, a retiree following the 4% rule would have ended up with more money at the end of 30 years than they started with, not less, more. Read that again. In most historical scenarios, you don't scrape by, you end up wealthier than the day you retired. The 4% rule isn't a razor-thin survival strategy. It's a conservative floor, a worst-case starting point. And the worst case it was designed for, the absolute hardest stretch in American market history, is the scenario where you barely make it. Every other scenario, you thrive. Now here's what makes this even more powerful for Gen X specifically. The 4% rule assumes a fixed withdrawal. The say the same inflation adjusted amount every single year, no matter what. But real people don't live like that. In a bad market year, you naturally spend a little less. You skip the vacation, you hold off on the car. In a good year, you spend a bit more. That flexibility, pulling 3.5% in a down year, 4.5% in an up year, is called a variable or flexible withdrawal strategy. And research shows it extends portfolio survival well beyond 30 years, often to 40 or more. So the real answer to, can I actually live off my savings, isn't a nervous maybe. For most Gen Xers with a reasonable portfolio and a willingness to flex their spending slightly, the answer is a clear, research-backed yes. Not because you'll be lucky, because the math is built to absorb the exact kind of chaos our generation has already lived through. The 4% rule didn't just survive the worst markets in history, it was designed for them. And in most cases, it won by a wide margin. Let's make this personal. 3 steps, all specific, all doable in the next 30 days. Step 1, and do this before anything else, calculate your personal 4% number. Take your current total invested portfolio, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, everything that's invested in the market, multiply it by 0.04. That gives you your annual withdrawal at 4%. Now divide by 12. That's your monthly retirement income from your portfolio alone. Write that number down. For a lot of us, this is the first time we've ever translated our savings into a monthly paycheck. And that translation matters because a portfolio is abstract. A monthly number is real. If your portfolio is $300,000, your 4% number is $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month. At $400,000, it's $1,333. At $500,000, $1,666. See it in monthly terms and it stops being a mystery. The second thing, which turns a single number into a complete picture, build your retirement income stack. Your 4% withdrawal is only one layer. Below it, write your projected Social Security benefit. Check ssa.gov for estimates at 62, 67, and 70. If you have any other income sources, a small pension, rental income, part-time work you plan to continue, add those too. Now total everything. This is your actual projected retirement income. But for most Gen Xers, the combination of 4% withdrawals plus Social Security lands somewhere between $35,000 and $55,000 a year. Compare that number to your current annual expenses minus the costs that disappear in retirement, like commuting, payroll taxes, and retirement contributions themselves. The gap between income and expenses is usually much smaller than people expect, and for some of us, there is no gap. The stack already works. You just never ran the numbers to see it. Third, and this one is specific to our age, run a flexible withdrawal stress test. Instead of assuming a fixed 4% every single year, model what your income looks like if you pull 3.5% in bad market years and 4.5% in good ones. You can do this with a free retirement calculator. FireCalc and CFireSim are two that let you adjust withdrawal rates across different historical market scenarios. Run your actual portfolio through those tools and watch what happens over a 30-year simulation. For most portfolios above 300,000, the survival rate across all historical periods is above 90%, and with flexible withdrawals, it pushes above 95%. Seeing that number, your specific portfolio surviving decades of real historical chaos, does something to the fear that no motivational speech ever could. It replaces catastrophe with evidence, and evidence is what finally lets you plan a life instead of planning an escape. These aren't abstract financial exercises. These are one evening moves that turn the biggest question of your financial life, can I actually do this, into a number you can see, trust, and build around. Remember that feeling from the start, hearing 4% and nodding along, pretending you understood, while somewhere behind the nod, your brain was asking, but will it actually work for me? I lived with that question for years, not because I couldn't do the math, because I was afraid of what the math would say. Every article about retirement felt like a warning. Every calculator felt like a trap waiting to confirm what I already feared, that there wasn't enough, that there would never be enough, that no matter how much I saved, something would come along and take it. But here's what the math actually says. The 4% rule wasn't built for a perfect world. It was built for the worst markets in recorded history, and it survived all of them. In most scenarios, it didn't just survive, it grew. The money lasted. And in a lot of cases, there was more at the end than at the beginning. You don't need a perfect economy to retire. You don't need $1 million. You don't need to predict the future. You need a portfolio, a plan, and the willingness to flex when the market flexes. The math works. The question was never whether the money would last. The question was whether you'd trust it enough to stop working and start living. Run your number, build your stack, and let the evidence replace the fear. Quick reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. These are patterns I've studied and lived through that consistently work for people in our specific situation. If this shifted how you're thinking about the 4% rule, drop a comment and tell me, have you calculated your personal 4% number yet? What did it come out to? I want to know. I read every single one, and if you want to see the 3 net worth levels where life changes completely for Gen X, that video is right here.